If you had to pick the single most important transformation in all of human history, what would it be? It wasn't inventing the wheel or even taming fire. It was a huge, fundamental shift in how we eat. We're going to dive into that move from hunting and gathering to farming and see how that one change literally created the world we're all living in today. But to really get a feel for how massive this change was, we have to go back. We have to picture what came before. Because for almost all of human history, we lived in a world that is, well, it's almost completely unrecognizable. A world without a single permanent house anywhere on the planet. I mean, really try to put yourself there. The sun wakes you up. There's no fridge to grab breakfast from, because there's no house to put a fridge in. For you and your small family group, there is one, and only one, job for the day. Find enough food to make it to tomorrow. For millions of years, that was it. That was being human. The difference is just staggering, isn't it? Our lives today are built on stability, on predictability. Theirs were a daily adventure, a struggle defined by being constantly on the move, always searching for that next meal. Nothing was ever guaranteed. So this incredible stretch of time, it actually has a name, the Paleolithic era. And just look at that time frame. We're not talking thousands of years. We're talking millions. It's almost impossible to wrap your head around. But for all that time, humanity lived the same way, as nomadic hunter-gatherers. So what did that life on the move actually look like for the people living it day in and day out? First, just let this number sink in. For 99% of the time modern humans have existed, we were hunter-gatherers. Our whole settled, civilized life, it's just a tiny, recent blip on the radar of human history. Imagine your entire world is this small group of maybe 20, 30 people, basically your extended family. You're always on the move, chasing the herds, following the seasons. But here's the most critical part. Society was pretty much equal. With no way to store up lots of possessions, you didn't have kings or bosses or landlords. Everyone had to chip in, because everyone's survival was on the line every single day. But hey, don't for a second think this was a simple life. These people were brilliant innovators. They developed a whole toolkit of specialized gear, from massive hand axes for butchering animals to these delicate bone needles for sewing clothes from hides. But their greatest technology, the #1 game changer, the control of fire. It gave them warmth, safety from predators, and cooked food. It completely changed what it meant to be human. Then, after millions of years of living this way, the world itself began to shift, setting the stage for a revolution that would change, well, everything. And what kicked it all off? You might have guessed it, climate change. The giant ice sheets started to retreat, the planet warmed up, and these new, lush environments popped up all over the place. And with new environments came new opportunities. And somewhere in one of these new places, some curious human, probably just watching seeds fall and sprout near their camp, had a thought that would change the world. They asked this simple but incredibly powerful question. This is the question that invents the future. Of course, this wasn't some sudden eureka moment. It was a slow, long process that unfolded over thousands of years. We're talking generations of people observing, experimenting, and passing that knowledge down until finally, they cracked the code. They mastered the cycle of planting and harvesting. They had become the world's very first farmers. And what's truly mind-blowing is that this didn't just happen in one place. People all over the planet, totally independent of each other, came up with this exact same revolutionary idea. You've got wheat popping up in the Middle East, rice in China, corn in Central America. Humanity, separated by vast oceans and continents, arrived at the same brilliant conclusion all on its own. So, what happens when you stop laundering and start planting? Well, it turns out you don't just change what's for dinner. You change absolutely everything. Right off the bat, the biggest, most immediate change was that you stopped moving. If your food is growing in a field, you gotta stay by that field. And this led to the very first permanent settlements in human history. Places like Jericho, which is one of the oldest cities on Earth that people are still living in today. And this new settled life demanded a totally new toolkit. Instead of just spear points, now you need sickles to harvest your grain and grinding stones to make flour. But the real game changer here was pottery. I know, it sounds kind of simple, but think about it. For the first time in history, you could reliably store your extra food, protecting it from pests and moisture through a long winter. That is a huge deal. So when you can actually produce and store surplus food, well, that has an absolutely explosive effect on our population. A stable food supply meant you could support more people in one place, and we did. The number of humans on the planet just skyrocketed. It jumped by as much as 10 times. And with a food surplus, something else happened. For the first time, not everyone had to spend all day, every day, just finding calories. This allowed for something totally new, the specialization of labor. Some people could get really good at making pots, others could become expert weavers, and some could become leaders or organizers. Society just got way, way more complex. Okay, so this is where it all comes home to us. Because the consequences of that decision made 10,000 years ago, they aren't just ancient history. They define the very structure of our world right now. With extra food and permanent villages, completely new ideas started to take root. Concepts that just didn't make sense to a hunter-gatherer, like private property. The idea that this is my land and my grain. And once you have that, you get the accumulation of wealth. And once you have wealth, you get social hierarchies. That equal world of the hunter-gatherer, it was gone, and it was never coming back. And really, everything we call civilization is built on this agricultural foundation. You simply can't have cities without a reliable food supply to feed everybody. You don't bother inventing writing until you need to keep track of who owns how much grain. Government, amazing architecture, science, art, all of it was only possible because farming freed up some people from that daily search for food. But here's the catch. This whole inheritance, it's a two-sided coin. For every amazing thing that farming gave us, it created a brand new, complicated problem. Cities led to widespread disease, stored wealth led to organized warfare, and social hierarchies brought inequality. These are the challenges we inherited, and they're the ones we're still wrestling with today. So in the end, that's what we're left with. The Neolithic Revolution wasn't just about how we grow food. It was about creating the blueprint for the modern world, with all of its incredible triumphs and all of its deep troubles. It gave us everything from science and art to inequality and warfare. And the question it leaves for us to think about is, was it worth it?